Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Energy and Aura Protection webinar. Today, we are super psyched to have here. I'm John Ruman with my co-host here, Dr. Nilash Ramnarine.
Hi, everybody.
And we're super psyched that you are here.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this webinar now that we're doing. The last time I did a webinar was when we were talking about immunity during the COVID crisis. And during that webinar, I hadn't had a haircut for a long time, and I probably hadn't shaved in a long time. So you could all see that, I've been able to sort that out. I'm also very excited about the Vitality Academy and that partnership that we have with John Ruman. It allows us to reach a bigger audience with our message and our information. And we have a lot of topics that we want to continue discussing. It's one thing that we're passionate about at Ishtara, and I think it's in keeping with the energy of the time, is that information should be accessible and available to everybody, and that's something that we feel strongly about. So we are committed to making sure that all of our webinars that we do, that all of the four doctors do together with John Ruman, are going to be that is accessible to everyone, and it allows us to reach people all over the world. So we just finished up a 3-part series on dark energy. So if you missed that, you can check it out inside Vitality Academy. Dr. Harry Ramnarine, my dad, would have put a lot of work and effort into that. And we have one more thing coming up with that soon, where we'll be showing you on a webinar all of the exercises that we spoke about and taught just very specifically about that. Now, let's get straight into our topic, which is protecting the energy field and the aura of the body. So, my background is in holistic medicine. I'm a medically trained doctor working at the Ishtara Center for the last 10 years, doing purely holistic healthcare. And what that means is that we pay equal attention to your physical health needs, your mental, emotional health needs, and then also your energetic or your spiritual health as well. And that's where sometimes people get a little bit confused, because they would say, okay, so that's, how do you validate that? Is that something that's important? I'm pretty sure that if you've tuned into this webinar, that it's something that you feel that is important. But I know that we have quite a big reach today with all the attendees, and some people might be hearing from us for the first time. And so, what we'll be bringing to bear in this webinar is my own 10 years of experience in holistic medicine, knowing that the energy field of the body, the aura of the body, is something that is very, very important to your health and well-being. And also 40 plus years of experience that comes along with Ishtara, and us understanding and researching different methodologies and technologies that assist with keeping the body's energy field in a pristine or clean state, and how that filters down to your own personal health, well-being, reaching your goals, and so on. One of the things that I think is worth understanding is that we do have an aura and an energy field to our body. That's a no-brainer to some people, but to some people they might be, okay, tell me a little bit more about that, and we'll cover that. So one of the examples that I use is that if you have an electrical current that runs through a wire, physics tells you that there's a field that surrounds that wire, and it extends outward far away from the wire. It's detectable outside the wire, and that's a magnetic field. So an electrical current that runs through a wire creates a magnetic field. And very similarly, because the body's energy system, which is full of junctions and nodes, and different languages and different cultures call them different things. So for instance, in the Indian Ayurvedic system, anything coming out of India, they would talk about chakras and nadis as being the junction points and the channels that energy flows through your body. And the traditional Chinese system would refer to dantian, which are energy fields, huge balls of energy that junction points in the body, and also acupuncture meridians, where this energy flows and runs through. So it stands to reason that if the body's energy is circulating through these junctions and these channels, that just like a current that's running through a wire, that it generates a field that extends out into the environment. And so, there's very many people who are interested in natural health who interact with that energy field, people who do Reiki, for instance, people who do any sort of energy healing, craniosacral therapy, they know a lot about that. And that's actually maybe their primary entry point into trying to assist somebody's health using those modalities. The whole energy network of the body, as it extends into space, it means that it confronts or interacts with other energy fields. So the energy field of the space that you're in, this room that I'm in, this house that I'm in, this country that I'm in, our energy field helps to create that. So it's clustered, and then it coalesces, and the energy that is in Trinidad right now is a product of our collective energy field. And we share, and we're part of that. And it can either sort of pull those who are kind of lagging behind, or pull down those who are kind of pushing up ahead of it. And so it's very important that we pay attention to the energy of our space and how we are responsible for it, in order to refine it and keep it in a harmonious way, if that's the kind of space that we want to live in. And as well, if we come into contact with individuals or persons who might have a positive or buoyant energy, people tend to notice that. They feel it. They feel elevated or lifted because of coming into contact with people who carry a good energy. And very, very similarly, which is one of the purposes of this seminar, if you come into contact with somebody, or if you have to work in an environment with people who are very heavy or negative, and you're in close quarters with them, then it kind of drags you down. And sometimes your own energy field, if you're not aware of it, can be pulled down, or the vibration of your energy field can be brought down to a lower level. You walk away from those encounters feeling drained, feeling tired. It takes a while for you to kind of recenter and resettle if you don't really understand the techniques, or pay attention to the importance of the cleanliness of your energy space in your energy field. And so the body's energy field actually has its own defense. So some people who are on this webinar might find that they don't experience anything like that at all. And that's good, because it means that your body's energy system, or your body's energy field, has its own structure, its own defense mechanism. So, one of the things that or how I explain that to patients is that let's forget about all of the spiritual trappings of what we're talking about, and think very simply in terms of another system in the body that protects you, the immune system. So the immune system protects you from external negative elements in the form of viruses and bacteria and anything from the outside world that maybe wants to harm you. So those things are microscopic. They're invisible. We a long time ago, people didn't even know that there were such things. But we have an innate system within our body, which can be strong or weak, that can defend us from those pathogens. And very similarly, people have a varying degree of natural or inborn defense against assault from negative energy fields around us. And so that defense mechanism is, like I said, either strong or weak, but it can wax and wane. It can fall away depending on what we're going through in our lives, depending on what's emotionally we're going through. And we'll talk about the importance of the heart center a little bit later on. And it can fall away based on the thoughts that we carry. There's no better word for it. I think Trinidad has a very good word called bad mind. And, we talk about that quite a lot to our patients, the importance of bad mind. So maybe for some of the foreign people who are tuning in who don't know what that is, that's the sort of the negative emotions that we hold against people, in our own mind, right? And so those sort of, because thoughts are energy, because emotions are energy, when we hold those negative emotions, it fractures or it damages our body's, our energy field's ability to defend itself. So that is very, very important. But also, as I spoke about the waxing or the waning of the body's innate defenses against negativity in the environment, astrology has a big part to play in that. So we've seen that in our practice, that people go through certain big cycles depending on when they're born. It's almost predictable, where you go through a period of time where your energy field's defenses falls back and falls very, very close to you. So you don't have that buffer anymore from its environment, and you take more hits from the environment. And you say, well, this never used to happen to me before. How come it is? And then somebody might, create a chart for you and look at that and say, hey, you're going through a period of time here where, and it will be a finite period of time where your defenses are down. So in the Vedic or the Indian astrological system, that's called a graha. And graha just means planet. But the connotation there is that there's a negative planetary influence that you're going through, and that can fracture or affect the energy field. And then if you consulted somebody who's into Western astrology, they might call it a malefic planet. So you're in your chart, because the chart is a sort of an imprint of the factors that influence you, or the factors that are strong or weak with you. So in your astrological chart, there may be a time where things tip against you versus for you. And then, we're also aware, and this is a teaching that my father quotes quite often, that they run up to your birthday. So, if you think about that, that's quite a big cycle that we go through once a year, that in the run up to your birthday, you're actually at your most vulnerable or your most weak. And so people who are aware of that, they take special care to protect themselves in the run up to their birthday. And they might find, if they ever get sick for the year, it might be within the month running up to their birthday, or the last 2 weeks running up to their birthday. And that kind of makes sense, because your birthday was the point where you came into the world, where you're born. And so we almost go through a sort of a mini rebirth every year, or every cycle in that way. And that has a lot to do with what we call our biorhythms. So there are periods of time that can be charted where your energy of your body, your physiological mechanisms go up and come down again. And then the other thing is that sometimes as human beings, we've been through, tremendous pain or trauma, and let's say the loss of a loved one, or some bad accident, or something that was overwhelming, shock, trauma. And they run up to the anniversary of those events. A lot of subconscious cues start developing. Let's say it was something that happened around Christmas time, or something that happened around any sort of calendar time. And when those cues start coming up, then the subconscious mind becomes very active, and the energy field that we create in our mind, and the energy field that comes from our heart, it becomes erratic or disordered, and that can affect the body's energy field in terms of protection as well. So it's important to be aware of those things. Now, one of the things we promised to talk about, and I think that got a lot of people interested, was the whole concept about empaths. So it's a word that I think, and me being in this field for the last 10 years, maybe just a few people knew about it or used that word maybe 10 years ago or even before. And then as we go on, if I mention it in my practice, people are much, much more aware of what that means and what that is. And so empath obviously comes from the root to empathize, or to have empathy with. But that's very, very oversimplified. So what we take the word empath to mean nowadays is somebody who is very energetically sensitive, right? And maybe I think 10 years ago, I would just hazard a guess that maybe the numbers were like 80-20. 80% of people were not energetically sensitive, or they weren't really aware of that, and then maybe 20% of people were. But it definitely seems that more and more people are identifying with that whole energetic state of being an empath. And of course, where you run into trouble with that is that if you're very, very energetically sensitive, then it means that you can get thrown off your center or your base very, very easily. But everything has to come at a cost. And one of the things that I tell people who I might identify with as an empath, or speak to them about it, they know it as well themselves, is that an empath derives a tremendous amount more information when they walk into a room, when they enter into an interaction with somebody, because their whole energy system is wide open. So they're receiving, gigabytes more data from their environment, and they can make better informed decisions, because that's how we make decisions, is through access to better and better information. So, the trade-off of being that energetically sensitive is that we're much more aware, or we're much more conscious. And so, but the thing about it is that people complain about that because it can be overwhelming. It can be overloading. They walk away from encounters either feeling totally buoyed up, or down in the dumps, very, very, very down. And so, if I encounter a patient like that, we would go through a lot of these techniques that I'm going to cover in this webinar about how to protect yourself and about how to ground yourself and about how to make sure that you're using the side of that double-edged sword that you would want to, rather than cutting yourself on the other side of it. And so, one of the ways that we could visualize or conceptualize being an empath is, well, let's talk about the extremes, because this is not just black and white. You have some people who are very, very, very sort of energetically or spiritually dense, and they don't understand a thing about what we're talking about. And then you have somebody who's ultra sensitive on the other side of that. But there's a lot of gray area there, and I think most people would lie somewhere in the middle. So let's say you identified on one end of that extreme where you don't have a clue about what we're talking about. It's kind of like somebody's colorblind, and you're talking to them about colors, and they say, well, it's not my experience. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you're mad. And so, you're talking about energetic phenomenon, and you're talking about being affected at an energetic level. And, they say, well, I hear people talk about those things. I hear people say they have dreams and premonitions. I hear people say that they might have seen a ghost in a room that they went into. And those things just sound like really nice stories. I never been my experience at all. And so, that's very similar to being colorblind and being told that, hey, by the way, there's tons of colors out there. And you just go, oh, that's a nice story. I don't know what you're talking about. So the other extreme of that would be being an empath. And the analogy that I like to use when I talk about that is that an empath is like, you're born with it. So it's an innate ability. Sometimes it comes through trauma, so early childhood trauma. But more and more now we're seeing that people identify with being empaths and they've not had any sort of significant trauma or childhood trauma to cause that. It's like being born into a house where all of the doors and windows are open. So you don't know that those doors and windows could be closed and reopened. But you're just born with them wide open. And so that's great, because when the weather is fine, when it's great weather outside, the lovely sunlight is coming in. It's not a dark house. It's fantastic. The breeze is coming in. Maybe a butterfly and a bird might come and sit on the window and sing a song and that sort of thing. But when it's storming outside, when the external environment changes, then everything gets wet inside. Everything gets damaged. The bad weather blows in, and you find it hard to be inside your house because it's supposed to protect you, and it's not really. And so that is the sort of the experience that I say to empaths, and I guess it makes sense to them that they're in a house that they've been born into with all the doors and windows open, and they don't know that they can close it. And they get a bit scared when it's closed, because they might think, oh my God, look how dark this place got, and look how shut it is, and I don't have any fresh air anymore. And it was so nice when the weather was nice and the doors were open. But if they're taught that they can sort of, when the external environment changes, that they can close up, they can shield themselves, they can use their house, which is their body's energy field, as a shelter, then open back up when things change, then all of them become very, very happy or pleased to hear that, because it's not an idea about just shutting down. And if you've seen all these lovely colors and then becoming colorblind and saying, well, sorry, you're gonna have to live like this for the rest of your life. And so to contrast that, using the same analogy, and an empath, as somebody who is not an empath, but let's say utilizes very many spiritual disciplines or spiritual techniques. Let's say they do yoga, they do qigong, they go through a number of initiations. And so it's a process of learning how these windows or doors to their body's energy field can be opened to the external environment. And that is a hard won or a hard fought battle that people who aren't empaths have to go through. But what they learn along the way is that, hey, I open this door so I can close it. And, I can close it when I want to and reopen it when I need to. So that's what the empath has to learn in reverse. And the thing about empaths nowadays in the Western world that we live in is that their whole experience is not validated. So a lot of people, less so now, but maybe people, let's say in their 40s or 50s, exposed to Orthodox religion and dogmatic religious practices, when they try to explain how they perceive or how they see the world, or the sort of the experience that they get when they encounter individuals or people, or the sort of the premonitions or the dreams that they get, they would have been shut down. people will tell them that sounds very strange, and you shouldn't talk about those things. And so there's a whole lot of shame that is associated with that, and it's a way of being that ends up becoming very suppressed in the Western world that we live in. And because it's not validated, it's something that a tremendous amount of people would find that if they suppress it, they suffer for. And I've seen in my own practice people who have embraced that eventually and found ways of expressing their empathic abilities, and they've conquered illness and disease in their life, in terms of learning a technique, for instance, like Reiki or SRT, or pulse diagnosis or anything like that, where they're tuning in a lot more and adding value to somebody that they're encountering. So they're using those techniques. Let's say a couple hundred years ago, if a child or a young person had expressed certain empathic abilities, then there would have been somebody in the village or somebody in the tribe who knew exactly what to do. A village elder, a wise person, a shaman, a medicine woman or a medicine man or something like that. And those individuals would have been very refined or very developed empaths, who would have learned all the techniques to protect themselves and to use their skill as a tool. And these young people and these children would have been taken under their wing. And that very, very powerful archetype that so an archetype is a Jungian term. That very, very powerful archetype of the magician, that magical tendency that we all have, to some greater or lesser extent, would have been validated and would have been, they would have derived some teaching as to how to carry about themselves. And so nowadays, one of the biggest problems is that it's not validated. We live in a very technological world, and we value technology. And our magicians nowadays are these technological geniuses like Bill Gates, for instance, and Elon Musk, but there's no sacredness in that. So, they might come up with fantastic ideas and they might be able to do things and think about things that nobody else can. But it's missing one very, very, very core element, which is the sacred. And that is something that archetype needs in order to ground itself, So we'll move on from talking about empaths to the whole energy field and how it needs to be protected. And so what I like to tell people is that the body's energy field has a structure when it's protecting itself. So it has you can almost think about it as having a crystalline structure. And if it has a structure which is stable, then that means that it can't really be knocked over or affected as easily. Now, that comes from groundedness and centeredness. And that might sound very boring for an empath who, all the energy is rushing up to the upper energy centers, and they're accessing all of this information, and it can seem very heady and very intoxicating. But that groundedness or centeredness and that structure to the body's energy field gives it the ability to be useful, gives it the ability to be a tool. So, we have this string of energy centers that runs through our core. And, in the Indian system, in the yogic system, they call it chakras. So we have 7 chakra system that runs down from the just above the head through the core of the body down into the sacrum. And then in the Chinese philosophy, the qigong philosophy, we have dantian, which is where, my experience with practicing qigong is that they pull chakras together. So you have an upper dantian, which is held in the cranial vault, and maybe takes up 3 chakras. And then you have a middle dantian, which is held in the center here. The center of it is the heart center, and takes up 2 energy centers. And then you have the lower dantian, which is in the bowl of the pelvis, which takes up another 3 energy centers. And so those energy centers should really have energy stacked like a pyramid. And so, I use this pyramid that I'm sure one of the people who are attending this webinar will recognize. So a pyramidal structure, if your energy field is structured like a pyramid, it has a wide base. So there's more energy stored at the base, and there's less and less and less that goes to the top. Now, one of the things about this is that the top of the pyramid is a sharp point, and these energy centers at the top here are used for discernment. They're used as a tool So that needs to be mixed. And we have a pyramid that has, no stability at the base, and it can't even stand up. It just flops over. And there's a tremendous amount of energy at the top here that is accessing a lot of higher centers, but isn't able to ground that or isn't able to utilize that. So it's very important, I think, for the energy system to be structured like a pyramid. This is our energy field we're talking about here. And so all of the energy practices that we do in qigong, in meditation and visualization, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the energy stores more at the base, and a little bit less, 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 so that we derive this pyramidal structure, which is very stable. If you put this on the floor and you tip it nearly to the edge, it will just fall straight back over into this pyramidal shape. It holds. It can take a lot of pushing, a lot of force in any direction, and it doesn't shift. Now, one of the things is that, okay, so, a pyramid can reach a certain peak, a certain point. And one of the things about your energy field is that if it can reach a higher peak or a higher point, then that means that you have access to much more information, you have access to higher centers, you have access to much more energy, and or more refined energy. And you can do that by flipping the pyramid onto its side, or but you lose stability, and everything that you gain just falls over. You'll be much more affected by negative energy of the environment if you try to do it that way. That's the easy way, a short circuit. It doesn't work. But the way to really reach a higher peak is to broaden the base. So as you cultivate energy, as you do certain energy practices that builds your energy and you conserve it, so that you do something every single day that builds a bit of energy. And we were talking about dark energy, so that's really what we're talking about in the last 3 webinars. Then what happens is the base expands, right? And what that means is that the peak is allowed to go higher and higher and higher. So you expand your peak by broadening your base. So as the energy builds, if it builds into this pyramidal structure naturally without you having to do anything at all, then what happens is the peak is able to reach a higher point, and you have access to higher states of consciousness, you have access to refined states of consciousness, you have access to much more information, and that's very, very useful to you because you can ground it off. So another saying that I've heard said, and it makes a lot of sense, is that the tree can grow as tall as the roots are deep, right? And so groundedness and centeredness is important. And naturally, as empaths, maybe there isn't that pyramidal shape, and that's something that you have to teach your energy field to hold. So you store a lot more energy in your base energy centers, and a little bit less, and a little bit less, and a little bit less, until it reaches a peak or point. And one of the things that we'll talk a little bit later on, but it makes sense to mention now, is that strung through the core of all of those chakras, or dantian, structural or center, is what we call our central meridian, or central energy channel. And in qigong and more advanced yogic teachings, because some people, Joe Dispenza, for instance, talks about that central meridian as being called the prana tube. So he links it back to yogic techniques. Is that carries energy fluidly up and down, and it connects us to earth, so it's very grounding, and then it goes out the top of the head and connects us to the heavens, as they say, so higher energy states. And so if there's a free flow through that, then nothing can get stuck in our energy field. So the central meridian is very, very important to making sure that if you encounter any negativity in the environment, that it just sort of cycles through and flows out. And if it finds its way where it needs to go, then perfect. It's a very qigong concept that was taught to me by a qigong master that says that there's no such thing as negative energy. There's just energy in the wrong place. So they reframe things like that, and it allows us to overcome a hurdle of feeling that we're being affected by something negative, or being persecuted, or something like that. And so we have a whole universe, and that energy that's stuck in us, that maybe because of our clinging or because of some blockage, is creating a negative energy disturbance. If it finds its way to where it needs to be, then it's a blessing there, and whereas it's a curse here. So the way that they say it is that gold is good, but it's not good in your stomach. So you eat a lump of gold and it'll probably hurt your stomach. It'll get stuck. It'll cause obstruction. But out of your stomach and in your hand, gold is a fantastic thing. And so they say there's no such thing as negative energy. It's really just blocked energy or stuck energy in the wrong place. And we'll come a little bit more to that a little bit later on. So I just wanted to cover some simple energy techniques that could be done to clear the body's energy field if you feel that it's been polluted. So sometimes we have that feeling where, we go somewhere or we encounter somebody and we come out of that feeling heavy or jaded, or we find there's one little misfortune after the next. And there's a very, very simple qigong practice that can be used using your body's own vital energy to sort of shake that energy or push that energy out. And so I call it the who push, because the sound that you make is who, and you bring that from the solar plexus area. So who, like that. And so I'll just demonstrate that just now. So when you're doing qigong, it's good for the knees to be slightly bent, and you're sort of almost, it's like you're sitting on a tall stool. And then what you're going to do with your hands is your hands can be placed like this. So you're pulling it up, and you take a breath in, and then you bring it here, and then you push out, and you give a sharp whoo, and so you bring it down again, and you breathe in, and you push out, whoo, and you bring it in, and you push out, whoo. And it's good to do things 3 times. We spoke about that in the dark energy practices. So 3s and 9s are very important numbers that you can do things. They're resonant with the universe. They're resonant with energy fields. And so you can push that out. You can also push it down. Whew. 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 So you're adding a lot of force, and the sound is coming from the solar plexus area. And then you can push it out to the sides. Whew. And then you can also do it up as well. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but so there's a turn of the hand that happens right here. Do it one more time. Just like that. And so already, that shakes out a lot of energy. And you don't have to do it just because you feel negative. You can do it at the end of a day, or you're doing it, think about it like a dog shaking itself dry. You're just allowing your own core energy to sort of push out to its extremes and shake off anything that's sort of stuck or clad there. And then it's a good idea to move some energy through your central meridian. So you're pulling energy up from the earth and then out through the sky and then back down. So you're creating a circuit. So, whatever you've shaken out or pushed out, you can replenish with fresh, new, clean energy. So again, we're standing like this, and, the hands will be like this. And then, so you can stoop down as you scoop energy up from the earth, bring it up. There's an in breath, and then you turn here at the heart center, and you out breath. You come down again, scoop energy up to the heart center, turn it like this, and then turn it around. And then it's always good to end qigong techniques by just putting one hand over the next, just under the navel here, and just bringing your intention to that point called your lower dantian and sealing that energy in. And one of the things about those practices is that it takes into account the central meridian, and you're running energy through that. And your central meridian is a channel, and it'll carry more and more energy the more that you work with it and the more that you move energy through it. And so there's some qigong practices, and what John will do is he will draw reference to that. It's a qigong practice that I was taught called 4 Golden Wheels exercise. It's taught by a master, Robert Peng, and there's a YouTube clip. So you'll get that. All the attendees will get that sent to them. And it's a really simple sequence. And what it does is it moves energy through your central energy meridian. And so it over a period of time of doing that, it opens up, or it expands that central energy meridian. So if maybe just as an example, there's just a little bit of energy flowing through that energy set, that energy core, that, after practicing for a period of time, that expands and opens up. And so there's a lot more flow. And that in itself will refresh itself and cleanse or clear any energy that doesn't belong to you out of your system. There's one more thing that I wanted to recommend as well. This is a technique that we teach at Ishtara, and so it's a spinning exercise. And that does a whole lot for your body's energy field. But one of the things that it does is that, and we're spinning in an anti-clockwise direction here, right? So if you think about it as turning back time, so it's anti-aging, it turns back time. then that's a good way to think about it and to remember it. But what this exercise does, what we find is that when you're spinning, is that it disconnects and reconnects you, right? So what happens is while you're spinning is that it disconnects you from all these sort of energy attachments that we have. And we all have a lot of energy attachments, so you might have energy attachments to a spouse, you might have energy attachments from your job, you might have energy attachments to your children. Some of those energy attachments are vital and important. But some of them are draining and they actually don't need to be there. And you just don't know that you have a plug in to your body's energy, taking energy all the time. And so when you do this anti-clockwise spinning exercise for 5 minutes, more if you wish, but at least maybe about 4 or 5 minutes, then what happens is you disconnect from all of those attachments. And then as you stop and center back, you will naturally reconnect as you go through your day to the energy attachments that you need. The good ones. So you get to choose again. So it's like, canceling all your standing orders from your bank and then subscribing to the ones that you need. So maybe the ones there that you didn't know you had. So it's really, really simple to do that. So what you do is you take your right hand, you put it up and it's facing up like this, and your left hand is down. This is called as above, so below position. And then you're just going to turn in an anti-clockwise direction. You're turning in an anti-clockwise direction. And the Sufis or the dervishes do this, and they've done this for years, and maybe they never explained why they did it. But we found that what it does is it disconnects and reconnects you. Okay, so you can turn as slowly as you want to, because if you did it quickly, you might get a bit dizzy. But you could do that slowly and try and do that for about 5 minutes. And you'll notice the difference. You'll notice the difference if you start your day like that. You'll notice the difference that it makes to you. Right. So those are some of the exercises that I think are very, very useful and worthwhile to learn. So hopefully you guys made some notes on that. One of the other important things that I wanted to talk about was keeping the heart center open. So as I said before, there's two ways or two big energy fields that can really disrupt the body's crystalline energetic structure, create disorder there. And it's the emotions that come from the heart, and then also our thoughts as well. And so, in Eastern philosophy, they call that the heart mind. They don't just speak about one of them separately because it's so very important. And so, it's very, very important for our protection from negativity from our environment to keep a very open heart. And that's easier said than done. So one of the things that I've found, and I've explained to people, and it makes a lot of sense, is that, I myself have never seen a miracle where, a hand reached down from heaven and did something. But I've seen seen and heard a lot of examples of miracles coming through the goodwill or the generosity or the heart of human beings. And so that stands to reason, because one of the closest things that we have to or access to divinity in this physical world that we inhabit is the energy that flows through the heart. And one of the things that I've learned is that the energy that flows through the open heart, it doesn't belong to you. It's just pure energy, pure divine energy, pure divine love that's flowing through from the open heart center. It's one of the most captivating things about looking at the innocence of children. So if you look at toddlers, children before, let's say, life happens to them, you see this tremendous amount of open-heartedness, this tremendous amount of wonder, this tremendous amount of joy that just flows out of our open heart center. It's very, very rare to see that in grown adults, because what happens is, as life happens to us, there's this myth that we all subscribe to, that we can close our heart in degrees to certain people. So something bad happens to us and we say, you know what, I'm not going to let that happen again. That really hurt. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to shield my heart or protect my heart from you, or I'm going to shield my heart and protect my heart from you. And, that's a very, very slippery slope to get into, because, we don't have the ability to lock off what flows from the heart to this person or that person or this situation or that situation. We just have the ability to close off the heart to everyone by degrees, and then eventually to ourselves. That's who suffers the most. And so keeping, as the heart starts to close down, or as we've become bitter, we become hurt more and more and more, it's a snowball that just starts to spiral out of control. And it's very, very important to take note of that, because that's really and truly one of the biggest roots our energy field collapsing in on itself, and then being affected by the negativity of the environment, you know. So that happens to everybody because we have this myth, this fallacy that we can close off our heart, you know, specifically to this one and that one, and, you know, some for you but none for you, and that kind of thing. But it all comes from this myth, because what comes out of here has nothing to do with you. It doesn't belong to you. You just have the access to, just like a window shade, you have the access to open it all the way full, or you have access to shield it down and down and down and down. And like I said, it becomes a very slippery slope somewhere near the end, where it just kind of shuts down, and you suffer. You suffer as the biggest consequence of that, and the loved ones that you have around you suffer as well. And so the like I said, the energy of the open heart is joy, gratitude, forgiveness. But the heart closes down because of negative emotions, and those negative emotions need to be purged. So it's not one of those situations where if you want to reopen your heart center, that you could fake it until you make it. That doesn't really work. You know, so you can't sort of pretend to have joy and pretend to have gratitude. What you have to do is expunge some of these negative emotions. So these negative emotions that we talk about, it's what I like to call, I didn't coin the phrase, it's Jungian again, shadow emotions. So shadow emotions are the emotions that we're not really proud of. You know, it's the stuff that we suppress and repress, or we pretend that we don't have. So, you know, there's about a dirty half dozen of these emotions: shame, guilt, fear, greed, resentment and anger, all these sort of the bad mind that we spoke about. And these emotions get suppressed. And what they do is they're the poison that actually shuts down the heart center. And so talking about shadow emotions is a topic for a whole webinar on its own. And we'll cover that, because it has much more to do with your well-being than just how it affects your body's energy field or your aura. But one of the easiest techniques that a lot of you who are attending this webinar might know about, that is able to sort of slice through all of those negative emotions, is the Ho'oponopono affirmation, or the Ho'oponopono prayer. And I asked John to fire off a link to all the attendees on a little bit more to read about that. But suffice to say, it's a Hawaiian affirmation, and it's an affirmation that we make to ourselves. And it's 4 simple lines. So what you do is you say your name, and then you say, so you say your name, and then you say, I'm sorry. You say your name, and then you say, please forgive me. You say your name, and then you then say, thank you, and then you say your name, and then you say, I love you. And so those 4 statements form one affirmation. So, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. And you know, it sounds very strange. Why would you be saying these things to yourself? It sounds, you know, it sounds almost like pointless, but I dare you to try it. Don't just do it once. You know, some people say you do it 108 times. So if I ever do this practice, if I'm feeling very heavy or very emotionally toxic, I would do it about 108 times. Why 108? Well, you know, those Buddhist or Eastern prayer beads, they have 108 cycles. It forms the number 9. Again, 8 and 1 is 9. So that's 12 nines. So that's a good number of it to do. And that'll take you no longer than 20 minutes if you don't fall asleep trying to do it. That happens to me sometimes as well. But yeah, if you do that, and I challenge you to do it, you will feel so light, you'll feel so refreshed, you feel good, you feel buoyant at the end of it. And that's because like a load gets lifted off of your chest, and the heart is allowed to sort of open back again. Because without you realizing it, the heart closes down very, very easily when you encounter, you know, burdens or difficulties as the day goes along. So we'll send a reference or a link for you to read a little bit more about the Ho'oponopono affirmation, or the Ho'oponopono prayer as it's called. And that funny word comes from Hawaii. Okay. So one other thing that I wanted to talk about, again, in respect to keeping your body's energy system clean and clear, is the whole concept of the life code. So I'm also going to get some help from John to talk about this, because he's a big fan of this. So the life code, or the life card. John, do you have a picture of your life card? Can you show what it looks like? So the life code is what we call an algorithm in Ishtara. It's a grid. It's a biomathematical grid, and it's something that you carry with you, and it's made up from your date of birth numbers. So, John, if you just flash that again, if you don't mind. And so the top 3 numbers would represent John's date of birth. John, I hope you don't mind people knowing that. So
now we know my birthday.
24th of the 3rd, 1977. You're going to get a lot more birthday presents now, John. So
hallelujah. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and then we create this harmonious grid to create a sort of a vibrational field or vibrational frequency that is unique to that person. And so that can be created for anyone, but it needs to be carried on you. So, one of the ways that I recommend that is in the form of a pendant. So this can be made, and I don't know if that'll project well, but yeah. So that's mine, and I wear this continuously. I don't ever take it off. And my wife has one as well, and I recommend it for quite a lot of people. And so we can arrange for that to be made for you. And some people have even gone on to tattoo it. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about what I think about that, and then John will tell you about his experience. So the life code, how it protects you from negativity, because it does, is that it brings you in tune with something called your life path. So that's a huge concept that everybody has a purpose in this universe. Everybody has a way that they should be creative, that they should be adding to existence. And, we have this free choice, but we can go against our life path. We can get confused as to what our life path is. And what the life code does is it brings our subconscious and our conscious attention towards our life path. And when you use it, when you wear it, it affects your body's energy field. It pulls you back in tune with your life path. When you're in tune with your life path, the whole universal energy is pushing behind you. And so as a result of that, you can't be affected by negativity because this huge stream has got your back. It's pushing you along, and it'll make sure that there's wind behind your sails. Otherwise, you tend to find that you get stuck in the doldrums. So, John, do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with it?
Yep. And one other thing I want to add, if you guys are into the numbers, see, mine, for example, is a 33. The number that is on the end is representative of the number.
Destiny number.
Yep. And that destiny number tells a lot about you. It's amazingly profound. So I live in Trinidad, where I met the doctors here, and my wife has a lifelong of going to the practice, and she and I got married while I was up in the States, and she sent this to me, and she gave me some rules. The rules were, as Dr. Nilash said, have it close to you. So, for example, I will have 5 or 6 copies of this throughout, but you get it laminated, and I'll tell you, you got to get copies because you're going to wash it. Unless you have the pendant that Dr. Nilash has, you're going to wash it, and then you're like, oh no, I got to get a new one. So just make copies and laminate them, and you're good. But before I moved to Trinidad, I kind of felt like I didn't have a strong mission about what I was all about. I was enjoying life, but I wasn't deeply fulfilled. So my wife sent this to me and kind of gave me the instructions. And basically, I just keep this in my back pocket, whether it's suit pants or jean pants, facing my body. So you have the numbers facing you. Apparently, that's important. But literally, in a very short time, I felt unbelievably compelled to do what I do now, which is more like a much greater service for many more people. For example, I had enough, just to briefly go on, when I lived in the States, I had enough stuff for 2 houses. I was in the process of in a very short time, had I not met my wife, of purchasing multifamily homes and doing all this wonderful stuff with them, furnishing them. But I literally gave it all away. I'm like, I don't want this because I need to be down there. I need to be here in Trinidad. I just felt this compulsion. So if you're someone who does not know your mission on this planet, and don't worry, the path will open for you. It's not going to be like, oh, you get this, and 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. But you'll get a strong pulling, and it'll be, you won't have a choice, it'll feel like, because it'll just compel you to want to do stuff. So if you're afraid of actually living your life you meant to live, don't ever get this. But if you feel I need to do more, and I could do more for humanity, like this has literally opened me up to do just things, very, very, very amazing things that I never considered 10 years ago, that now like the next step I can't wait for. Like just this platform with these guys is amazing, right? I'm sure you guys know because you're on this. So I would strongly encourage you to get the life code card. And it's probably better to do the pendant route, because it's kind of a pain in the butt to do the lamination, get them copied, right? So it may be easier, or you can get them tattooed. And
John, have you got your tattoo? Have you got your tattoo yet?
I have a tattoo, but I am married to someone who does.
Yeah. A lot of my patients said, I don't have a life code tattoo. I wear mine as a gem. But a lot of patients have said, hey, I don't have a problem getting a tattoo. We just have to make sure the numbers are right. You don't want to have a wrong.
Make it
Yeah. So once we check and double check, yeah, you go ahead. And there's quite a few people on the chat there that I know have it tattooed. I know quite a few people who are brave enough to do that, and it's worked out well for them. Everybody who uses it finds that it makes a big difference in their life. And just from a philosophical point, negativity, because a lot of people feel, I hear this in my practice, they feel that they're being affected by negativity from the environment, whether it's spiritual, whether it's from other people around them, and so on. And the thing about it is that fundamentally that's really because you're stuck in the wrong place. You're not on your path. And if you are on your path, then it means that the universe doesn't have to employ sort of negative techniques to kind of kick you or push you. And if you just sort of get your heels stuck in and dug in and say, no, I'm being stubborn here, I'm just going to stay right here, then the kicks just get harder and harder and harder to take. But if you find yourself on your life path and your heart is singing and you're doing what you're meant, or your absolute purpose is meant to achieve or to do, then the whole universe is flowing in your direction. And the thing about being on your life path is that it can change. Some of the most interesting people that I've met, what they do is they follow a path for a certain period of time, and then the energy changes and they make a about turn. Now, anything can happen at that stage. You can jump off at that point and say, I want to stay right here. And then all of a sudden the wind isn't blowing in their sails anymore. And then they have to jump back on their life path. It's always easy to find it back. You don't end up far away, you just end up stuck, where the energy isn't flowing in your life anymore. So the life code is one of the most powerful technologies. And like I said, it's really easy for us to make. And I just saw in the chat there that some of the Ishtara staff are answering questions about how people can get that. So the other thing go ahead.
Can I make one tiny thing about Ho'oponopono?
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very, very powerful, guys. Do not underestimate the simplicity. It's like, don't underestimate the simplicity of the life code, nor Ho'oponopono. But it's a powerful forgiveness exercise, and most people have people who they can never physically see. The person may have died. They may live in you'll never be able to see them. And the point is, you don't need to have it have the energetic benefit for you. Mm-hmm. So if this person, your grandfather, did these awful things, and you're like, you need to go through it. It's extremely powerful, but the person does not have to be physically present.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to bring that up because there's a lot of forgiveness that needs to happen in the world, and people say, well, I can't, they're dead. And that's not true. So
well, and that's an interesting layer to add to that, John, because ever since I've been doing it, which isn't long, maybe 3 months or so, I've only ever done it to myself. And so I always just use my name. But you're right, there was a question on the chat there, can you say it to other people? And yes, of course you can. But whenever I recommend it to people, it's based on purging the stuff that you hold against yourself, because I think that is the starting point. After that, you can think about other people. If you think about other people before you think about removing the poison from yourself, that's like kind of being in the situation where you're trying to fumble to put that oxygen mask on the child next to you before doing it to yourself. You're going to faint long before you can help them, and then both people are affected.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it like that. That's how I think about it. And so we'll move on quickly because we're going to run out of time. We have to answer some questions to some of the stuff that maybe you guys thought you were going to hear about. So I focused a lot of this webinar on the root causes as to why your energy field might be affected in the first place, and giving people the empowerment to understand that they don't have to go out and get something, and they don't have to go out and buy something in order to protect the energy field, and why they might be affected in the first place. But there are a lot of what we call technologies that can assist the body's energy field. And some of them I use myself, so because I'm in an environment where I deal with a lot of other people's problems and negativity on a day-to-day basis. And so I find these technologies very useful to help me to continue to be effective for them. And then also to continue to be effective for myself and those that I care about at home and so on. And so gemstones are a good example of that. And so gemstones are a technology. So they have a tremendous amount of energy. Gemstones are formed deep within the earth. So they carry a lot of earth energy, very grounding and very centering. And then each one has its own unique elemental makeup. And so therefore its own unique energetic component that they can impart onto our energy field. And so jet is a good gemstone that is protective. Jet is actually petrified wood. So it's very, very light when you get your hands on it. And it's black like this. And John, you wear some jet, don't you?
Yes, I have a jet on my necklace right now. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So jet protects against the effect of the evil eye. So the effect of the evil eye is something that people might think is a bit of hocus pocus. But what I find interesting is that evil eye is something that is present in almost every single culture. Every single ancient culture talks about the effect of that, and I see it very simply. It's not a curse. It's not something that somebody's working against you. It's very simply the projected negativity, the projected anger or jealousy or something that is leveled at people who they see, maybe doing better than them or doing something that they wish they could do or something. It's a natural human tendency to sort of throw a stone at, somebody who maybe you may perceive is sort of pulling away from where you are. Right, and so that is something that exists as in the world, unfortunately, and protecting yourself from it as you strive to go forward and better yourself is important. And so jet does that. And so in Trinidad, a lot of people buy little jet beads for little babies because they can get affected by that very easily. But anybody can wear jet, and then black tourmaline. So you notice that a lot of the gems that help with negative energy are black because they absorb everything. So black is a color that absorbs all the other colors, right? So black gemstones are absorbing a lot of energy, and so it's pulling it in. So black tourmaline is not an expensive gemstone, and it's it's a rutilated gemstone. I don't have a picture of it or example of it to show you, and that is another one that is very protective. And I often recommend that people who are involved with massage therapists or practitioners, Reiki practitioners, anybody who's involved with interacting directly with people's energy fields hands-on, that they use a piece of black tourmaline so that they protect their own energy field. And they also do a lot of practices as well, like what we described, to protect the energy field. Obsidian is another good gemstone for protecting against negativity. Pure obsidian or rainbow obsidian. I find rainbow obsidian is fantastic for negative energy states that get really, really toxic and really, really stuck. Rainbow obsidian is good. And so pure obsidian is just obviously pure black. It's kind of glassy in appearance. Beware of things like green obsidian, which is actually fake. Snowflake obsidian, I don't think does very much for this particular field, but pure black obsidian or rainbow obsidian. Rainbow obsidian has this sort of marbled swirl into it. It's really, really beautiful. And then you can use pieces of selenite. Selenite is cheap. You get big pieces of it, and you can put that in rooms. You can put that in spaces, and it has a way of cleansing and purifying the energy of the space that you're in. So those are some of the gemstones. There are a lot more that we didn't cover, but those are some of the big ones. And then one of the other things that I want to talk about is incense and smoking out. So incense brings in the fire element, which is very purging or cleansing. Fire also consumes things. It burns itself out after it's consumed things. And of course, you don't want to have a big burning fire in your house. So using incense brings that energy into the space and can be very purifying. Be careful of incense sticks. What in the Far East they call joss sticks, because nowadays they're full of synthetic fragrances. They're not made in a natural way anymore. And we tend to find that they release a lot of volatile organic compounds into your space, and that can be very toxic. So instead, we go straight to the actual natural substance. There's a picture of white sage on the intro to this webinar. So if anybody's registered for the webinar, you'd have seen a picture of what white sage looks like. And you can get that in a number of places in Trinidad. We even have it at the office as well. And so that can be reused. It can cleanse a space. It's called smudging. And then some of the other things that can be used are Palo Santo wood. So this is something that comes from Central America into Mexico and the southern part to purify or sanctify the space. And we found that is tremendously purifying as well. So Palo Santo wood can be bought. I don't think we have any stock in the office right now, but you can get it online. So it's PALOSANTO, and that's wood. And then there's frankincense, which is I always tell people frankincense, or it's called gugul in Trinidad, is revered by almost every single old world culture. In fact, in the New World as well, there's trees that are called incense trees, and they're relatives to frankincense. And so they produce a resin, a very fragrant resin. Once you smell it, you know it, because if you've attended a religious ceremony, you would have smelled frankincense. It's used in Islam, it's used in Christianity and Catholicism, it's used in Judaism, it's used in Hinduism. So you get little beads of resin that you can burn onto coals, or you can heat up on a fire, and it smokes and produces a fantastic aroma that you can cleanse space with. So you can move it around the house and cleanse out a room where you feel that there's stuck energy. You can smoke out yourself with it. And then myrrh is good as well, but I put that last on the list because I don't really use that much myself. But in Trinidad, it's called loban. And myrrh is another old world or ancient tree resin. And so you get the resins themselves, and you can use those to smoke out or to burn in a space. And then we spoke about gemstones before. Gemstones can actually be cleansed using white sage to smudge them in smoke, because after a while they pick up a lot on their negativity and they may be less useful. So you can use or any of these incenses to smoke out the gemstones themselves to cleanse and purify them. And I'm just going to call John back into the webinar now because he wanted to talk about a virtual form or a visualization form of smoking out or clearing space, just like sage.
Just like sage. And guys, when you sage, make sure you don't forget to sage the corners. The negative energies like to stick in corners. So focus on corners when you're saging. Okay, so this is a visualization practice. I will actually briefly do it with you guys here now. It's called the Violet Flame Meditation. It's fairly simple. So what I want you to do is I'll talk you through it. You're going to close your eyes in whatever space you're in. And in your mind's eye, I want you to imagine on the floor of the room that you're in, that it doesn't have anything on it, but the floor has just this tiny little flame. It's almost like a lighter flame. And they're all this beautiful violet blue. And then within this room, almost like it has plexi, let's say you have an open door, open window, I want you in your mind's eye to imagine this blue violet light, this fire, slowly coming up in the room. And it'll start slow and it'll slowly fill the entire room. So literally in maybe 30 or 40 seconds, and please in your mind's eye right now, do this to the room you're in. And I want you to literally fill, so it literally fills all the corners of the room. And you're kind of basically right now immersed in this beautiful violet flame yourself because you're doing it in the room, the space you're in. And so now you can stop and open your eyes. Very, very simple. So again, you envision the floor, the space you're in, have these tiny little flames. You lift that from the floor all the way to the ceiling. And you can do this for big spaces, but the challenge is visualization takes practice. It's a muscle. I mean, if you have a child, they could visualize like that. But adults, this takes practice. But what you'll notice is the energy in the space will come really, really clean, especially if it's kind of heavy energy. And what I will do as well is when I fill the room, so I'll fill the space with it, I'll, in my mind's eye, kind of like the WHO exercise Dr. Nilash was doing, I'll push and pull, almost like the things that do this motion in a fire, you know what I'm talking about? They fan the flame.
Bellows, so like a bellows.
Yes, like this giant bellow. I fan the flame. And I don't do this physically. I just do it in my head. And kind of like increase the intensity of the heat of this violet flame. And you'll notice the room will kind of feel, kind of nice.
So would you share with us what you told me about Trinity Food Court? Could you share that story?
Yes.
That was a fantastic story.
So I had learned this 4 or 5 years ago. And my wife and I used to live in Trin City. And we were at Trin City. And I was practicing with bigger spaces because again, it's like a muscle, you know. I'm like, I'm gonna do this energy clearing to the Trin City food court, and I did it. And I was like really, really big into it. My wife was when she went to the restroom, and then when she came back, she goes, "It feels really nice out here." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" Because she's very sensitive, and but what's cool is areas like that where there's a lot of not happy people. And even just the employees like working around there, just not carrying happy energy, it'll really lighten the space, and it not only blesses you, but it blesses everyone who's there.
And John, did everybody walk away from the fried chicken places when you did that? Did that happen?
Everyone went to the vegan smoothie place.
Right.
But what's interesting is again, with practice it gets better. But I notice even in the kind of like me talking about it in the space I'm in here, I actually feel a little lighter.
Right. Yeah. But I felt that as well. I felt that as well when I did it. And I'm sure some of the people in the chat.
One quick thing. So guys, if you're doing the fanning, I would be cognizant if someone else who's energetically sensitive, like maybe an empathetic person in the room, because they will feel it, and it almost feels like you're being like this sorcerer with energy. Not that it's negative energy, but they'll feel that and they may not appreciate it. Because again, all their doors and windows are open, as Dr. Nilash mentioned earlier. So be empathetic of their energy sensitivity when you're playing with the energy of the room.
Right. So just to wrap this up before we get the questions going, I just wanted to mention quickly about music and sacred chants. So that is another thing. So you bring sound energy into the space, and if that sound energy is purifying or cleansing, that can do a lot to change the energy and the vibration of the space. And so sometimes you move into a new house, or you go to a hotel room, or the energy of your home becomes polluted because you have workmen in, and it just doesn't feel the same. And so, apart from smoking out, you can do sacred chanting in there with your own voice. You can play sacred chants. There's tons of these things on YouTube now. One of the ones I like a lot, and I have no religious affiliation, is the Gregorian chants. And John will send you a link to the YouTube video of that. And that's proven itself to us so many times. So the Gregorian chants is this very peaceful chanting of the Psalms that are done by the Benedictine monks of Santo Domingo de Silos. And they produced, a number of records on this now. But it's very, very soothing. It's instantly recognizable as spiritual. And one of the stories that I tell about that, my dad tells it as well, is that when we moved into the building that we call, the original Ishtara building, because we built a new building now. When we moved into that new building, it was used as a house for many years, and we were always neighbors to that house, and it attracted some real, very weird tenants. Never anybody that stayed. It was a whole mess when we got the building, and we were going to purpose this place as a holistic health center, and it just really didn't carry the energy or the vibration of that. It was very, very heavy energy. And so what my dad did is that he put a CD player at the time. Nobody has CD players anymore except my wife. He put a CD player on with the Gregorian chants on loop, and he just left it for a whole weekend, and it just played and played and played for a whole weekend, 48 hours. By the time he came back, that was enough to have shifted and changed the energy of the place. And so I've recommended that to people time and time again. It makes a big difference. And so you can loop it on YouTube. You can play it very, very low in a room, in your living room or something like that, and just go to sleep. Go to sleep in your bedroom. Just play it in your living room. Wake up the next day and see how the energy of your place feels. It's very sanctifying, very purifying. And then I just wanted to mention about some Ishtara technologies that we have available to cleanse and purify energy of space. So one of the popular ones that a lot of our patients come and ask for is the Aura Cleanse vibrational drops. So does this present itself well? Yeah. Sunara Essences Aura Cleanse. So this is a vibrational drops that you can take yourself to cleanse and purify the aura. So if you're dealing with a situation where you're dealing with a lot of negative energy, a lot of negative individuals, or if you're an empath and you're very sensitive, that's one of those things that a lot of our patients who are would keep in their medicine cabinet and they would use from time to time. And then we also have a quantum crystal. So this is produced to block or protect the body's energy field from all forms of negativity. And so again, if you're somebody who's very, very sensitive, or if you are for a period of time having to deal with a very negative environment, this is an energetically charged crystal. So the crystal itself doesn't carry the vibration. It has some sacred geometry built into it, like all of our quantum field devices that we sell. But we've energized this or charged this to be kept on your person. You can wear it as a pendant, or you can just tuck it in or keep it in a pocket or attach a keyring to it. And what this does is when it's on your person is it creates or protects your energy field. And this has proven itself. We've only had it for about 4 or 5 months, but this has proven itself already to me. So I have a couple of stories about that. And then the last thing as well is the Feng Shui grids. We're working on upgrading these. So these Feng Shui grids can be, again, it's an algorithm. It's a biomathematical code. These can be placed into rooms, and you can get these at the center. But we're about to upgrade them or update them to just do a little bit more. That doesn't mean that this loses its energy or its charge. It's just like another version. And so what this does is it brings a harmonious energy. It brings the energy of Feng Shui into the space, so it harmonizes the energy of your home. So the energy of your home builds and it protects itself. So that's something that we have as well. And so those are all the sort of things that I wanted to talk about, John. Is there anything that that you would have liked to say?
Can I ask about if hookah, the hookah verbiage, does that have a similar kind of protective?
Oh yeah. So there's so I didn't mention that, but yes, hookah and huya. So these are power words that has to again be said with intention. It has to pull the energy from your solar plexus area, and you say huya or hookah. So hookah is like putting up a shield, and huya is like sticking out a dagger. That's the energy that it carries, and so it builds that sort of energy, or that brings that sort of vibration into your energy field. And so that could be for physical protection. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're physically threatened, you can use those intonations. You can say it out loud, or you can say it in your mind, but it's a good idea to practice it, saying it out loud. So you build that confidence in bringing that energy into your energy field. And actually hookah is, or a version of it, is what the Navy SEALs say before they get going. So when they do a mission, I think it's popularized on Hollywood movies where they say huya, but so it's hookah and huya. It gives them that sort of energy to sort of get things done, because they're fighting people. And so we've validated that, we've tested it, and so those things can be used to protect yourself. So if you ever find yourself in a threatening or compromising situation, you bring that protective and aggressive energy into your energy field. That's good.
I really feel it. I really feel it when I do the hookah. Like before we leave for vacation, I'll hookah the whole house. Or even if going on a drive, for some reason I'll feel remotely unsure about something, I'll hookah the vehicle. So and in my opinion, you can do it to people too. It's like, if they're for some reason insecure, just visualize like a plexiglass tube around them and just say hookah. So
yeah.
Okay, so let's start with Q&A.
Right.
So guys, if you have questions, we got 15 minutes to answer them. So now's the time. We're open, but I got a few already queued up. So from Emma, do you agree that empaths are in a much better aspect by learning techniques such as the Silva method to maintain equilibrium and sustain their subtle body energy?
Yeah. So she what Emma did there was to reference a particular method, but yes, empaths are. Tremendously benefited by being able to learn that if they lose their stability. So if they start to hold on to a lot of negative or toxic emotions, then their whole energy field becomes very turbulent and distorted. And so they can, if they're in a positive energy state, they change the energy of their space or their room. If they're in a negative energy state, through negative emotions, that the opposite happens. So they change the energy of their space or their room. And so learning techniques like the Silver Mind method, learning mindfulness techniques, learning energetic techniques, and they'll know when it works, is very, very beneficial to empaths. Yeah.
Love it. A lot of people want to know where to get shungite and jet and all that. I'm assuming they can just buy it on Amazon. I bought my necklace, for example, guys, on the site that people in the U.S. go, and they all kind of have their partial shops.
Right. Called. So I sourced a local supply of jet if people don't have it locally. My father's brother has the gem shop in Grand Bazaar, and I was just there this weekend just to make sure that he had certain things that I was going to be talking about. Because some people skybox him, and yes, that of course they can. I bought jet. Is careful with jet though, because I bought some jet online the other day, and I found that I got obsidian instead. You get a lot of fake stuff sometimes, but so you can get that at the gem shop in Grand Bazaar. And even the black tourmaline, the rainbow moonstones and stuff as well.
So Vero's asking, is the life code card personalized? I believe it is based off your personal birth date, right?
Yes. So the life code card is personalized based on your birth date. If you live abroad, I saw some questions on that. We can mail it to you. You can pay us for it to just.
Okay. So you broke up a little bit there. So if someone's international, you can email to them, right?
Yes, that's right. We can email it to you.
All right. Anya says, is golden sheen obsidian also good for protection?
Golden sheen obsidian, that's a good one. Now, what I know about obsidian is that it really is a form of natural glass. Yeah. And I only know about snowflake obsidian, black obsidian, and rainbow obsidian. Now, I might be wrong, but I have seen a lot of fake obsidians out there, man-made obsidian. And they just don't carry the same energy because they weren't made in the earth. They weren't made by natural elements. And so I don't know about golden sheen obsidian. I might be wrong, but you just want to probably reference if that is man-made, right? And if it is, it won't actually carry the vibration that we're looking for.
Okay. What would you recommend as a first practice for a child who is an empath?
How old is the child? That's a good question, because anybody can learn qigong techniques, and so you can start teaching them to move energy with their breath. My son is 6 years old. I'm sure he'll get that very, very easily. So some of the techniques that we taught, the Hu technique, and also the breathing techniques through the central meridian, up and out, very, very easy. And then the qigong techniques that we're going to reference, anybody can do them. So those are good techniques. And then you can introduce them to meditation. Some people think that it takes, you have to be meditating for 20 minutes, half an hour. You can meditate for 5 to 7 minutes to start with. This is the attention span of young children. And unfortunately, the attention span of like adults nowadays as well.
I'm waiting for Nilash to be refreshed. So Crystal, while I'm waiting for Nilash to be refreshed, I'll answer your question. Crystal Lee said, what about shungite? Shungite does have the same benefit or another protective benefit as well. So thank you for joining us, Crystal. Let me see. All right. I'll message Nilash. I don't know if he knows he is frozen. So the life code card, for those who missed that, the life code card is available through the practice. You can reach out to them, call them, email them, and find out that.
Am I back on?
You give them your date of birth. Make sure your specific day, month, year. Nilash is coming back.
Yes,
Make sure your specific day, month, year, and they can make it for you. If you're international, they can email it to you. Okay, so let's see what other questions people have. Rose quartz. Welcome back.
Thank you.
What about rose quartz? There's a mountain here close to where I used to live that's full of quartz. So, I'm sorry, I misread it. Raw quartz.
So every single piece of raw quartz carries its own vibration or energy. So we love to collect big pieces of quartz because each one is unique. Each one carries its own energy. But quartz can be programmed or energized. You can program it with your own intention. So you can cleanse it and then program it with your own intention. Clear stones like that can be. But quartz by itself doesn't protect your energy field. But yeah, if you worked with a piece of quartz to be protective for you, then yes, absolutely. And then at Ishtara, you can bring us a piece of quartz and you can tell us what you want to do, protect the energy of your space, attract abundance, attract wealth, and we can use the technologies that we have to energize that for you.
So you can customize
as well
crystals and stones that people send to you, right? Or bring to you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
What about spikenard oil to protect and cleanse? Or
spikenard, yeah. So spikenard is called it's a sacred one. It's expensive as well. Very strong smell. Spikenard is biblical. I think people know about spikenard from the Bible, but it's also called jatamansi in Hindu or Ayurvedic practice, and it works very, very well for the sort of the base or the root chakra. So it's very grounding. It's very centering. So it can help empaths. Yes, it doesn't cleanse the energy of the space, I don't think, but it works on the human energy field. Sure does.
Okay. Zahara said, "Can you cleanse your aura by walking in the rain?"
Yes, yeah. Off the top of my head, I think you can. So in contact with what we didn't mention, contact with nature, contact with natural energy. And this is another webinar that John and I will hopefully be doing, entering flow state. But yes, all of those things are very cleansing and clearing. So contact with natural elements, going to the beach, going to a waterfall, the rain, all of those things can be very cleansing and clearing.
And okay, Tarek. And forgive me, guys, I'm not from Trinidad originally, so if I mispronounce your name and bastardize it, just forgive me in advance.
That's correct. Tarek is good.
Tarek, Nilash, what are your thoughts on amethyst for cleansing of home and office? He's frozen. Tarek, you'll have to wait just a moment longer. I do not know the answer to that question. Well, I have a question from Titian Rose. Crystal bracelets to be worn on left or right hand. I'd love to hear their feedback. My understanding, it doesn't really matter, but you do protect more of your auric field if it's worn over your neck. So a necklace, my understanding is they will have more of an auric benefit if there is one over a necklace. So I have heard that before, but I'd love to hear their feedback. Let's see. So guys, we have about 10 more minutes. So any further questions, I'd love to see them. So please bring questions. This has been great. I'd love to hear your feedback as well.
Sorry again, John. I think I lost my stream there again, but I'm back on.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So what question did we get to?
So the question on amethyst for cleansing home office from Tarek.
Right. Amethyst, amethyst is purple in color. It's fantastically protective. We tend to use it for protection from physical injury and physical assault and so on. So if you're in a profession or if you feel like you're at risk of that, amethyst is also fantastic for keeping the crown chakra open, because that's the color of the crown chakra. So it brings in a lot of positive energy from the top down.
Awesome.
So,
Titian Rose said crystal bracelets to be worn on left or right hand.
You know what? Whatever feels right. So, I'm wearing shungite right now. I tried it on my left hand, tried it on my right hand, and I just found that it's much more comfortable on the right hand. So, I mean, if you encountered us and we were able to test it for you uniquely, that's one thing. But you can play around with it. It won't throw you off too much. You decide which one works better for you.
Ravita said, where can one learn more energy cleansing and balancing techniques?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. So learn a bit more.
Great question. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so Ravita, you can interact more with us about that in person at Ishtara. I'm sure you could do that with us. And then it's what you're in sync with or what you're in tune with. There's a whole load of online courses now. John, are you aware of any from your network that I think Mind Valley is good, but I don't know if they have courses on energy protection and aura stuff.
There are a couple teachers in there that probably should have it in there, but I don't remember the names off the top of my head. One is a white gentleman, shoulder length hair. A lot of what he talks about is very similar to what we're talking about here, but I do not remember his name offhand.
Right,
and then they could have it. You're right.
And then qigong techniques I find are very, very good. Like I said, so you could learn more about qigong.
All right, so we'll do two more questions. What does it mean when a crystal breaks?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. So recently I had a situation where I gave a patient a piece of rainbow obsidian for some huge amount of negativity that they were carrying. And they came to see me just a few weeks later because I just wanted to check back on them. And they brought the crystal in pieces. No, it wasn't going to work anymore. I told them that. But they no longer were carrying that negativity. So it seems that the crystal absorbed it and just shattered. It just took enough of it. So if it breaks, it's no longer useful, but it may very well have absorbed something to the point where it couldn't absorb anymore.
And then last question, how can you tell if your child is an empath?
So empaths tend to get dreams, premonitions and dreams. They would be affected by the environment a lot more. They would bring energy into the environment as well as be affected by the environment, and that tends to last longer and longer, longer than it typically would. And usually, if they're very, very young, they'd have periods of time of encountering people where they would maybe cry a lot or display some sort of odd symptoms until some sort of clearing or cleansing is done for them, and then they settle down. In our culture in Trinidad, that will commonly be done for them if a child isn't stopping crying or something like that. But young children tend to be a lot more open like that. But if it's extending as they get older, then you might want to think that they might be an empath. And then the things that they say as well, being very existential in their thoughts, talking a lot about God and angels and these sort of things, being interested in those things more than the normal, so that kind of thing.
And I find a lot of children generally are more naturally open or seem to be aware of energy of outside persons than a lot of adults.
Yeah, and they shut down based on if that's validated or not.
True. All right, so we'll do one more, and then we'll briefly talk about the Vitality Academy. And you guys, if you want to learn more about that. So, David Dash, welcome, David. Is the Central Meridian equivalent to the Kundalini?
No, it isn't. So the Kundalini energy may travel along the Central Meridian, but it's a different concept. So the Kundalini energy is what is called the coiled serpent. And so it's knotted and condensed energy at the base of the sacrum that can be coaxed through shock and trauma or certain practices to open up and expand and shoot up the Central Meridian. When it does that, it starts to break up chakra blockages, and it won't stop until it reaches all the way to the top. And so if it's something that happens all by itself, it can be a very destabilizing phenomenon because it just keeps slamming into chakra blockages until it sort of breaks through that. People have a very difficult time. But if you've attended to those chakra blockages, and it flows very seamlessly up the Central Meridian or the energy channel. So the Kundalini energy is something that uses the Central Meridian, but it isn't the Central Meridian.
Awesome. So before we finish off, guys, just as a heads up, in 2 weeks from today will be the next webinar. I'll be doing it with Dr. Roshan. If you don't know Dr. Roshan, you'll meet him in a couple weeks. And the topic, we have yet to go on specific details, but right now the topic is finding joy in adversity. So we're going to help you really cultivate that joy that right now there are very challenging times, and it's a great time actually even going on the concept of energetic protection, because if you're able to really have a high level of vibration and positivity, a lot of the things that could naturally pull you down don't. And then real quickly, if you want to watch the replay of this or any of the previous other 7 webinars we've done, we do have the webinar academy, the Vitality Academy, and I'm going to post this here. You can go to it when we're done. And the Vitality Academy does allow you to view these on your own, and what you'll get is a 3-day free trial. So you get to kind of test it out, if you will, and see if it's something you like. And a few things that we're offering there just to kind of show you the benefits of it. So you'll have access to those while you're a member, so you can watch them 10 times if you want. If there's notes you didn't get down and you couldn't write fast enough, you'll get access to those. And obviously the previous 7 as well. And as we add those, that library will expand. In addition, we're going to have a monthly Q&A. So the members of the Academy will get a private Q&A with the doctors. And in more of a Zoom format. And so not so much like a webinar format that we have now, but more of a Zoom format. So it's a little more personal and intimate. And then we're going to do a once a month minimum. We may do more, but we'll start off with a monthly podcast that the doctors are going to do as well. So you'll have all of those things. You get the webinars you have here. You have access to those. You also get access to the podcast, as well as again the Q&A. So with that, let's I'll wait for Dr. Nilash to come back.
Yes, I'm back on.
And it's been a wonderful time having you guys. It's been really fun. You want to say good evening to everyone?
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Lovely sharing information, and it's been a great webinar. Thank you for tuning in.
You guys had great questions, too. It's been great having you. All right, guys, have a great night.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.